I just want a chance to talk things out with him. President Matsumoto quickly asked. Are you saying you're willing to give up a huge amount of money just for this one shot? Japan had lost 10 of its best hunters on Jeju Island. They really needed new ones fast, and they still had the hazard pay meant for those who didn't make it back. So they were ready to spend big. If it meant getting Jin-Woo to come to Japan, President Matsumoto was willing to give up the magic gems without a second thought. But then President Go dropped a bombshell. I refuse, he said flatly. President Matsumoto's eyes widened in shock. Wait, did you just say no? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. He had been so sure President Go would help him get a meeting with Jin-Woo, even if convincing the hunter to switch sides was still a long shot. But now, it seemed like getting that meeting might be harder than he thought. He never thought President Go would say no to his idea. Are you that worried you'll lose Hunter Sung to Japan? He asked. President Go shook his head. No, I'm saying you don't even have the right to a single essence stone on Jeju Island in the first place. The room fell silent. The Japanese interpreter's eyes widened in shock as he stared at President Go. Sir, is it really okay to translate those exact words? He asked nervously. Of course, President Go replied firmly. Please tell him exactly what I said without leaving out a single word. President Matsumoto's face turned bright red after hearing the translation. His voice rose sharply. President Go, what is this nonsense? He exclaimed. Just then President Go began speaking in Japanese. His words coming out slowly and carefully. President Matsumoto looked surprised, clearly not expecting this. Wait, you can speak Japanese?
Yeah, I learned some growing up.
My dad had a small business there. He shrugged, but that was years ago, so my Japanese is pretty rusty now. I can't hold long conversations or anything. As President Matsumoto nodded, and the two interpreters stepped out of the room. Then he got straight to the point. 10 of our top S-rank hunters lost their lives for your country, he said firmly, and among them was Riji Goto, Japan's strongest hunter. He paused, his tone turning cold. If you don't accept my proposal, I'll have no choice but to take action. Hand over half of the essence stones like promised. President Matsumoto insisted. And give us something for the hunters we lost. President Go scoffed. You really think you're in control here, don't you, President Matsumoto? President Matsumoto's face lit up with anger as he jumped to his feet. How dare you? We fought for your country, a heated Japanese man shouted. President Go stayed calm and replied. There's one thing I'm curious about. President Matsumoto slowly sat back down, taking a deep breath as President Go's cool demeanor helped ease the tension. After a moment, President Go continued. Japan loves being in the international spotlight, but you let us handle the most important job, taking down the Queen Ant. President Matsumoto frowned slightly. That's because Korea didn't have the strength to create a strong enough distraction for the army of ants, he said. President Go tilted his head thoughtfully. But wouldn't it make more sense to let the Koreans create a diversion, while your best team went after the Queen? President Matsumoto's gaze shifted, avoiding President Go's piercing eyes. Wait, what's going on here? President Matsumoto asked, looking straight at President Go. Are you saying your hunters left because of that giant monster bug? That's not true, is it? You were planning to pull them out all along. President Go's eyes widened in shock. You're out of your mind. Matsumoto shook his head, grinning. No, you're the crazy one. What were you really planning to do? Just leave our hunters to fend for themselves against that monster? President Go glared at him, clearly annoyed. Matsumoto didn't seem to care. He just laughed loudly, like he thought the whole thing was some kind of joke. Hey! After a moment, he pulled out a small recorder from his pocket. You just said all of that out loud, he said with a smirk. You totally blamed those Japanese hunters without any proof and refused to pay them what you promised. His sneaky grin grew wider. Now, let's see what the rest of the world thinks about this. The recording would make it seem like the Japanese hunters had backed out, even though they'd really retreated during the mission. This would definitely change how people see things. President Go had just made a big mistake by throwing out such a reckless accusation. President Matsumoto wondered if President Go was angry enough to lash out physically. That would make things even worse. Meanwhile, the voice recording had already been sent to a server in Japan. But then... Got evidence right here. President Go pulled out a small black cube from his jacket pocket. It was about the size of a stamp. President Matsumoto looked confused. "What is that?" he asked. President Go smiled as he saw the puzzled look on Matsumoto's face. "Hunter Sung found this at the scene and handed it over to me. It's part of a communication device." President Matsumoto's face turned bright red in a snap. President Go didn't waste a second. He whipped out a small music player and hit play. The sound clicked on. "How long has it been since the Koreans went in?" a voice asked. "Wait a minute," someone replied. "It's been just under 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes. It's almost time to pull back." The voice added. Ruji Goto's voice came through loud and clear. He's one of the most well-known guys from Japan. After all, President Go stopped the recording. "Ever wonder why I haven't shared this news publicly?" President Shigeo Matsumoto of the Hunters Association of Japan. President Matsumoto shook his head slowly. His face had changed from red to as pale as paper. "I wanted the Korean people to enjoy our victory without this ruining it. I stayed strong for my people, not yours," President Matsumoto said, his voice firm. The recorder slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a loud clink. President Go smirked. "You probably know what's coming next, President Matsumoto," he said sharply. President Go clenched his fist, smashing the recorder into pieces. "Get out. Now," he shouted. Jin-Woo wasted no time leaving. The assistant director was now alone in the room with Norma. Oz Selner. What just happened? Michael had gone on tons of hunts before and he'd been on plenty of adventures with Norma. But this was totally new territory. He'd never seen a S. Norma leaned over, gasping for air, her hands pressed against her knees. She could barely get the words out. "He's a king. A really powerful one." Michael's eyes went wide in shock. Only 3 people in the world knew exactly how Norma's power worked. The director, the assistant director, and Norma herself. And now she was saying that Jin-Woo Sung was a king. Ba-dump. Ba-dump. Michael felt his heart racing once more. "Then, are you saying he's at the caliber of a national-level hunter?" he asked. Norma shook her head. "I don't know that for sure. It feels different. He's a king but not quite the same." "What?" While I was looking into his eyes, it felt like he was looking straight back into my soul, Norma said, her voice trembling. "But that's the same as other hunters," Michael started to argue. "No," Norma shouted, her face pale and sweaty. "Not Hunter Sung." The endless darkness inside him was staring right back at me. She grabbed Michael's arm, her eyes wide with fear. Fear gripped Norma like a vice. It's the kind of terror that every living thing feels when staring death in the face, but she pushed through it, remembering the most crucial thing she knew about Jin-Woo. "Also, he is." Norma's voice trembled, but Michael leaned in, hanging on her every word. She struggled to speak, her lips barely parting. "Limitless." The applicant, President Shigeo Matsumoto, collapsed to his knees with a loud thud. As the head of a powerful organization representing all hunters in Japan, he wasn't the kind of man who easily showed weakness. But now, there he was kneeling on the floor. His mind raced with thoughts, each one more overwhelming than the last. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't come up with another plan. There was no time for pride or dignity. If the truth came out, he could lose a lot more than just his job. "President Go, please forgive me," he begged. President Go stared at him with icy cold eyes. President Matsumoto had always been full of big talk and bold confidence, until things took a turn against him. "Get up," President Go said sharply. The man kept bowing deeply, his head thudding against the floor again and again. Bam. Like he couldn't stop apologizing. President Go sighed coolly. This isn't helping anyone. But the Japanese man just pounded his forehead harder, as if apologizing would fix everything. The truth was, Japan was in trouble. More than half of their top hunters were gone, and without them, things looked grim. Even with a strong hunter system, losing so many elite fighters left their future uncertain. Now they needed help from other countries to survive. Their current hunters were strong enough to handle A-rank dungeons without much trouble, but if an S-rank gate showed up, nobody knew what would happen. The disaster that struck Jeju Island could easily repeat in Japan. If that recording gets out, we'll be completely isolated. "Please, President Go," he begged. "Think about the innocent people here, and spare me. Consider this your punishment." President Go's sharp words cut him off mid-sentence. Think of this as punishment for the wrong thing you and your hunters were about to do, President Go said, his voice firm but calm. This is like a bomb just waiting to go off any time. He added, making it clear how serious things were. President Matsumoto stayed on the floor, bowing deeply. I won't move until you forgive me. Please, just think about this one more time, he pleaded. President Go sighed, looking clearly upset. And you leave me no choice, he said. He pulled out his cell phone, ready to take action. You have 5 minutes, President Go said with a smirk. His words were confusing, but they sparked a lot of curiosity. The man from Korea held up his phone like it was a weapon. If you don't leave in 5 minutes, every reporter on this list will get a message, saying the president of Japan's Hunters Association is kneeling and begging for forgiveness. President Matsumoto might try to stall out of fear, but President Go wasn't holding back. He was ready to set off an explosive situation right there, and then. This was more like a warning to the Japanese man than a real threat. But, he bit his lip nervously. President Go wasn't the type to give in to emotional appeals. President Matsumoto had figured this out too late. Desperate, he'd swallowed his pride to make one last plea. But it hadn't worked. It had actually made things worse. President Go wobbled to his feet and slammed down his phone. Thank goodness for Hunter Sung. He barked, his eyes blazing like an angry animal. If our hunters got hurt because of you instead of that giant ant, you'd be in big trouble right now. President Matsumoto grabbed his stuff with shaky hands and ran out as fast as he could, not daring to look back. President Go slouched back on the couch, letting out a deep breath. He felt super satisfied with what he'd done. But he wasn't finished yet. Right now, he basically held the future of the Hunters Association of Japan in his hands. He'd always believed that everyone has to pay for their mistakes. It was like that old saying, what goes around comes around. And honestly, no one knew that better than him. Just as he sat there thinking about all this, the phone on the table rang loudly. He glanced at it, a little surprised, and then picked it up. The voice on the other end sounded super urgent. His eyes widened in shock as he listened. Wait. There's a gate right in the middle of the road. To make things even crazier, it was a B-rank gateway tougher than what a regular team could handle. Where is this happening? Someone asked urgently. It would be best to call one of the big guilds and have their hunters take care of it. But then President Go stopped mid-thought. He raised an eyebrow as he looked at the information in front of him. Didn't Hunter Sung's guild office happen to be nearby? Meanwhile, traffic on the road was getting worse by the minute. Cars were piling up and people were starting to get frustrated. Jin-Woo sat quietly in his car, lost in thought. That woman, Norma Selner, had seen something. She was used to dealing with tough hunters, but there was something about Jin-Woo that really spooked her. What had she noticed? Was it a glimpse of the system? Sure, the system had given him tough challenges before, but it wasn't something scary or dangerous. It was more like a helpful guide. But what did Norma think she saw? The assistant director even asked if he could contact Jin-Woo again sometime. Norma looked shocked by Michael's request, like she'd seen a ghost. Her body language screamed that she never wanted to see Jin-Woo again, if she had any say in it. Jin-Woo, meanwhile, had a sneaking suspicion that Norma's ability wouldn't work on him anyway, since he was different from other hunters. No point wasting time on this. So he politely turned down Michael's offer. Jin-Woo's eyes widened in shock, and he couldn't forget that surprised look on his face. Man, what's going on with all this traffic? He muttered, glaring at the endless line of cars ahead. He shook his head, thinking, this is exactly why I should have taken the subway. Just as he wondered if there had been an accident. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Buzz, startled him. And since it was charging, he quickly reached to check who could be calling at such a terrible time. Jin-Woo checked the caller ID. President Go. But wait, Jin-Woo had just seen him a few hours ago at the funeral. Why was he calling again so soon? Jin-Woo picked up. Hunter Sung. This is Gun-hee Go. President Go said smoothly. He explained that something strange was happening in the middle of Seoul. Excuse me. Jin-Woo replied. A gate just appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the road. Jin-Woo wasn't surprised. After all, it had been a day full of unexpected events. This wasn't just another traffic jam. Jin-Woo tried to turn the van around, but they were stuck in a sea of cars. He let out a deep sigh and faced forward again. But then President Go said something that made Jin-Woo forget all about the traffic. Based on our staff's evaluation, he announced, it's a B-rank gate. Would you like to take care of it? Jin-Woo was about to burst from holding back his laughter. This was amazing news, but he didn't want to seem excited when so many others were dealing with the problem. He cleared his throat, trying to sound serious. But can I go in without a raid permit? The other person chuckled. Hunter Sung, where do you even get a raid permit? From the association, Jin-Woo replied, playing along. And who am I? The other person's tone made it clear. They were teasing him. Jin-Woo stifled another laugh, barely keeping a straight face. You're the president of said association. Haha. Please don't worry about it. Enter at will. Jin-Woo grinned from ear to ear. Awesome. Thank you. He hopped out of the van and followed the flow of magical energy toward the gate. The road was already packed with cars, so he didn't need to worry about parking. This black hole you see here is a gate that appeared today in the middle. Someone explained. According to the info we just got, this is a B-rank gate. Because of its high rank, the guild had to be called in. Reporters were already swarming around the portal. Police officers were helping association workers block off the area. Jin-Woo pushed through the crowd of reporters and approached the gate. A woman with a serious face stepped forward, holding up her hand to stop him. Hey, where do you think you're going? She asked firmly, placing her hand on his chest to push him back. You can't just barge in here like this, she exclaimed, pushing against Jin-Woo with all her might. But no matter how hard she tried, he didn't budge. He was as sturdy as a wall. She stopped struggling and stared up at him, realization dawning on her face. Wait, are you a hunter? She asked, her voice tinged with surprise. Jin-Woo pulled out his ID and held it up for her to see. Her eyes widened in shock. Srank, she gasped, nearly losing her balance. Wait, is that Jin-Woo Song? That's the guy who totally rocked it against those giant magic ants on Jeju Island. She finally realized who he was. She hadn't recognized him at first because he looked different from how he appeared on TV. In a huge crowd like this, there are always some people who figure things out faster than others. Huh? Someone whispered. Is that guy, Jin-Woo Song? No way. Another person exclaimed. Then the whispers turned into excited chatter. It's really Jin-Woo Song. He's here to handle the gate himself. The crowd of frustrated civilians suddenly perked up, their faces lighting up with delight. Knowing that Jin-Woo Song was there made everyone feel a little safer, and a lot more hopeful. The last thing on their minds was being late. Not when they were all busy cheering Jin-Woo with so much energy. But no matter how loudly the crowd shouted his name, the association rep didn't budge. She stood her ground, looking as tough as ever. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke up, her voice a little shaky. What brings you here? She asked, even though the answer was pretty obvious. Did she really need to ask? There was only one reason why a hunter like Jin-Woo would be standing in front of a gate. Jin-Woo gave a quick nod toward the gate behind the woman. The representative glanced back over her shoulder, and her expression turned firm. She knew too many hunters had lost their lives because they ignored the rules, or relied too much on their own strength. Even the strongest hunters could fall if they weren't careful. She had learned that the Hunter Association existed to prevent exactly these kinds of tragedies. Hunter safety was a top priority for the association, so they couldn't let someone as important as an S-rank hunter get hurt. That's why she said firmly, even if you're an S-rank hunter, I can't let you ignore the rules. Jin-Woo stared at her in stunned silence. He hadn't seen this coming. She thought he finally understood. Got a raid permit. Jin-Woo shook his head. The guard crossed her arms, looking tough but fair. Even if you did, she said, you can't go in without at least 5 squad members. Jin-Woo scratched the back of his head, feeling stuck. Jin-Woo felt like he had no choice but to act fast. Please, just give me a second, he said before making an urgent call. Once the line connected, he handed the phone to the representative. Here.
Yes.
This is for you. The woman stared at him suspiciously.
Whoa, who is it?
She asked. Someone else, you probably wouldn't approve of. Jin-Woo replied. She took the phone hesitantly, and her eyes widened as soon as she saw the caller ID. Jigun he go. Could this really be? Hello, she stuttered into the phone, sounding nervous. A deep voice answered on the other end. This is President Go. Her face turned pale, and she couldn't stop nodding.
Yes, sir.
She stammered, glancing around awkwardly, unsure of what to do next. Yep. Nope. Yep. Got it. Click. She handed Jin-Woo the phone, looking pretty down. As he walked by, Jin-Woo said softly, Thanks. For worrying about me. Wait, Were you messing with me? Jin-Woo vanished in an instant through the gate. Ugh. The association rep was super mad and glared angrily, muttering curses his way. Please, she thought, make him trip and sprain his ankle in there. But Jin-Woo Sung had come back from Jeju Island, without a scratch when it was crawling with S-rank magic beasts. What could possibly happen to him in a B-rank dungeon? Right then, screams echoed from all directions. Wait a minute, someone asked, confused. Why is the gate turning red? Jin-Woo had just stepped through the black gate when it suddenly changed color. Now it was a deep blood red. Just seeing the red gate like this could give you the chills. The representative gasped in shock. Oh no, she exclaimed, looking super freaked out. Jin-Woo couldn't help but feel guilty, even though he knew it wasn't his fault. But still, the sight of that eerie red gate made him wonder, what's going on here? She worked at the association, and knew red gates were super dangerous, leading to strange worlds. Even top hunters might not make it back alive. She turned pale, worried he might get seriously hurt. Oh no, she muttered. How long had this been going on? She kept blaming herself until she felt someone nearby and looked up. Jin-Woo was standing right there, making her jump like she'd seen a ghost. He just grinned and walked on by. Her face turned even redder than before, especially after her talk with President Go. Jin-Woo glanced around and then walked up to the driver of a potato truck. Sir, can I buy a sack? He asked. The driver looked confused. Huh? Just a potato sack? Ranavids, Jin-Woo shook his head. Nope, just the sack. Thanks. Jin-Woo walked into the office of Solo Play, a guild he was helping get off the ground. Seated at the desk was Jin-Ho-Yu, who handled pretty much everything, recruiting, legal stuff, and even the money. Hey, boss, welcome back, Jin-Ho said with a smile. Anything I need to know about? Not really, Jin-Ho replied. But hey, we have someone who wants to join as a founding member. Jin-Woo's eyes lit up. Oh, right. Let me see the list. I'll check too, Jin-Woo said. Jin-Ho wouldn't drop the subject, so he was clearly super into starting this guild. Luckily, Jin-Woo felt the same way about it. They just needed one more person to meet the rule of having at least 3 founders to create a guild. Even though the last spot was just to fill the requirement, it'd be awesome if that person worked hard since they'd all be spending a lot of time together anyway. Jin-Woo nodded to himself as he thought this over. But then he noticed Jin-Ho looked kinda down. What's up? Jin-Woo asked. It's just, boss. Jin-Ho started. Yeah? Well, you know how much money it takes to start a guild, right? High-ranking dungeons sell for huge money at auctions, and we'll have to pay extra to hire a hunter, especially for this guy's. Jin-Woo cut him off. Is this enough? Stud. Jin-Woo slammed a burlap sack onto the floor. Jin-Ho peeked inside and raised an eyebrow. The sack was stuffed with glowing essence stones, super valuable stuff. Boss. What's all this? Jin-Woo asked casually, shrugging it off. I ran into a gate on my way here. There was a moment of silence. In just a few hours away from the office, Jin-Woo had somehow cleared a high-ranked dungeon. He stumbled upon and collected the essence stones like. It was no big deal. You're amazing, boss. Jin-Woo said, completely unfazed by how unbelievable it sounded.